Good morning. It is April 2nd, and this is our Career Tech Coffee Hour. We do have with us this morning Ray Blevins. He will be presenting this morning on data and some things that he's been working on. So Ray was with us, if you will remember, earlier this school year. He did a great coffee hour on AI. If you have not seen that recording, I would be sure to take a look at that. Ray really opened up, I think, our eyes into the potential possibility, especially for instructors in utilizing some of those AI tools. So welcome back, Ray. Thank you for agreeing to be our guest speaker today. And I am excited to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. It's glad to be back with the Career Tech Coffee Hour. Again, my name is Ray Blevins. I'm the Career Tech Planning District Consultant for Region 6. As you can tell, I'm kind of a data person as well, between the artificial intelligence, the data side. So I wanted to jump in a little bit and talk about some of what we're doing in Region 6 to assist our Career Tech Planning Districts as well as our associate districts. And I don't know if any of the Career Tech Planning Districts represented today in the coffee hour has a school district that is participating in the Each Child on Track series. Now, part of Each Child on Track is a early warning intervention management system, and it's requesting data from not only the school district as a whole, but also anywhere that is servicing students from that school district. So I'm going to kind of back up a little bit and take a perspective from a legal perspective about what are some of the requirements that impact a Career Tech Planning District as it relates to our state systemic improvement plan, and then talk about some of the solutions that we're trying to put in place as one of the approaches. So let's talk a little bit about the policy on career advising. Now, one of the things as a Career Tech Planning District consultant and the 10 years prior to that as a special ed consultant working in transition is we've had this law in the state of Ohio that says that every school district and Career Tech Planning District must have a career advising policy that covers grades 6 through 12. And it specifically requires that the school districts must identify students who are off track. Now, one of the things that I normally find when I go to work with a school district or work with a Career Tech Planning District, everyone can provide me a policy, a board approved policy. And if you're on today and you are a Neola district, I'm talking about your policy 2413. And all of the policies seem to say the same thing. They're a bullet, almost word for word from the example the Department of Education published, with the exception it says the superintendent or the district will develop a plan. And that plan says that you will execute certain things. And one part of that plan is that you will identify students who are off track. Well, the question is, if you're on today's session, what are your thresholds to determine who's off track? So if I came to your Career Tech Planning District and we had sit down and had a conversation, and I said, how are you identifying students that are off track? Would you be able to show me a written plan with your thresholds of how you're identifying those students? And would you be able to tell me how you are notifying your associate districts of who's off track and what interventions are occurring? Because that is what's encompassed in this particular law. Now, I'm not going to dive deep into it. I just put some of the text here. I've put in blue some of the key phrases. Lisa has assisted by putting in the chat box a link to the actual regulation. But again, if you're in Neola district, it's policy 2413. And I think if you're not a Neola district, look at policy IJ. I think policy IJ will be your other policy that you'll pick up, but it's one of those two policies. Now, last year in Region 15, I did a multi-day professional development on career advising. And one of the things that I focused in on was the connections between our career advising policy, our graduation plan policy, and multi-tier systems of support. And what I wanted to point out is, if you think about our career advising policy, it says that anytime a child is off track, and we normally think about off track as being attendance, behavior, course performance. So we have our pyramid, multi-tiers of supports that we normally do. We are also implementing our student success plans under career advising, and we're also modifying possibly our graduation plan pursuant to that specific law. So again, remember, our career advising policy says it will identify students off track. You have to have those thresholds. And then based upon that, that's informing our success plans and that's informing our graduation plans. One of the common misconceptions is that these are all separate, and they're not. So if I'm a career tech planning district, I know that every one of my students, whether they're off track or on track, have to have a graduation plan. We have to have those in place by 9th grade. We also are still required to do student success plans and provide that career advising when a student's off track. So how does this deal with data? Well, how are you defining and how are you communicating? One of the approaches that we've been looking at is adopting some of the thresholds that are being used by the state of Ohio, and it's each child on track. And that's part of our state systemic improvement plan to address graduation rates, also graduation rates for students with disabilities. Now, the information you see here on this slide, I've kind of extrapolated from a manual. The manual we're going to post in the chat box, you'll find is the national manual. Ohio hasn't publicly broadcasted its own early warning intervention management system, or EWIM system, manual yet. It should hopefully be published in the upcoming year or two, that they'll do that on a wide scale. If you are a career tech planning district that's part of the Each Child on Track, you most likely have already received Ohio's manual as part of that process. What I want to point out, though, is I'm going to focus mainly because of our audience today on grades 9 through 12, because I know that most of our career tech planning districts are focused on grades 11 and 12 at our primary centers. But national data backed by research shows that a child who is missing more than 10% of school, what we're going to consider chronically absent, who has had 1 day of in-school, out-of-school, or expulsion, or is failing any class, is off track and more likely not to graduate. So we call those the ABCs. These are the thresholds that we're using in a data collection process. I want to just pause to see if there's any questions about those thresholds. So again, 10% or more, I've had any type of in-school, out-of-school, or expulsion, or I have failed any course. The reason this becomes important, again, this is the type of information our career tech planning districts should be able to communicate back to our associate districts who's off track. If you are your associate districts in Each Child on Track district, they should be asking you to provide them this information. And this would be the thresholds that they would be asking for. For that reason, one of the things that I've been helping Urbana City and Ohio High Point is to develop a visualization process using Looker Studio. And the purpose of this is, how can we extract some of the information from our student information systems so that we can streamline it and use it for planning purposes. So in a global sense, what we're hoping to have in place by the end of this year, because it's still in progress, is that working with the ITC, they will set up a system that's going to automatically every night update a series of files, and that will then update our Looker Studio. So for example, with Ohio High Point, they have 14 associate districts. The hope is every night their data will update, that will result in updating all 14 school districts about who's off track. So there will be an automated system that will make it possible for all associate districts to have an update. Ohio High Point will be able to control who has the ability to look at that data. So they'll identify like maybe the high school principal, the high school guidance counselor, who will have access to the information they are sharing. So we'll pause again to see if there's just any questions. If not, let's look at a little bit about what this visualization can look like. And I'm just going to exit out of our presentation real quick. And Lisa has been assisting me by putting some of these documents in, but there's a Looker Studio data file. I see that she's put the bit.ly link into the chat box for you. You have the ability to go in and look at this document. I will say this to you. I like to provide you usable formats. So if you have a Google account and you want to make a copy of this Looker Studio, the only thing you need to do is go up here to these three dots, select make a copy, and it will actually copy the example data file for you, and it will copy the Looker Studio, and you can then edit it and make it work for you. So the formatting of this is already completed for you. It's a free copy to you. Please note that all of the data that's in this example is made up data. So like the names, I've simply went out to a website and told it to generate me a lot of names. And I put the names in there. So there's no real student data for us to look at here. So let's just talk a little bit about what we're doing. So this is formatted for a local school district, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what we could be doing from the standpoint of a career tech planning district. And I'm just going to jot down to these attendance summary reports that I've got on the left side. I'm going to go to a bar graph real quick. So what this bar graph is doing is it's looking at a data file, and I've formatted that data file, and Lisa's also provided you a link to it. What it's simply doing is it's going through and it's collecting a lot of information. And if you're looking at this data file, and I see there's several people in that data file, there are a lot of hidden tabs. You'll see that are in red. But I'm just going to show you what one of those looks like real quick. So this system is set up to automatically generate using a lot of different formulas. For example, in this first cell, you'll just see that I've already created a formula to collect information, share it, and do the calculations for you. So this template is set up to automatically generate and change things. Only thing you would need to do is to place information in these green tabs, and all of the other tabs will automatically populate. So there's nothing extra you have to do other than go out. Is there anyone on here that's not progress book? And we'll look in the chat. Or is there anyone that's not using progress book? This is actually formatted off a progress book. Okay, I see a power school. Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is most of my districts are using progress book. So you can go into the reports tab and like download an attendance district detail report. That'll give you most of your roster information. There's a daily detailed list of attendance that you can download, and that will then populate a lot of your attendance data. So I have never formatted one for Power School, but you can simply move your columns and rename your columns, and it should generate and very easily be updated to your student information system. The main thing I want to point out to you, this is adaptable. Looker Studio, which is the visualization tool, is free. It's a Google product. It has been recently, in the last year or so, renamed to Looker Studio. It was prior to that Google Data Visualization, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the visualization software simply puts all of the information in for free. So, for example, if I wanted to look at this particular report, and this is looking at attendance, and it's saying out of 553 students, 189 students in Q1 had at least 10% or more of their attendance off track. So 34.18% of the student body was off track. I've also had this set up so it'll automatically break down the student body by students with disabilities and without disabilities. So we can either look at it by sheer number by grade, or we could look at this by percentages. And if I wanted to change my quarters, I simply go to my drop downs and we can shift it. So we went from 189 in the first quarter to 233 students. We're now over 40% of the student body. Now, I know these numbers seem high, but I am doing this with multiple school districts, and I'm finding that it's not unusual to have 35 to 50% of the student body off track for 10% or more. So just by a watershed, would you put into the chat, are you seeing high numbers of students off track for attendance? Yes, no, or thumbs up or something. How are you doing on attendance in your career tech planning districts? Not seeing anything in the chat. I am one of those teachers that, Anita Archer would say, just sit here and be quiet. Attendance is tough. I totally agree with you, on that one. So we are, as a state and nationally, we're seeing a huge issue with attendance. We're seeing a lot of employers, our our business advisory councils, or telling us that we're seeing students who are coming out. We're seeing a lot of problems with attendance at work. We're seeing a lot of problems attendance in school. So the reason I bring this up to you is, if someone was to ask you to communicate how your attendance rates for a specific program or a specific school, how hard would that be for you? On this left-hand side, we can base these, we call these filters. You can create a filter off of anything. So for right now, let's just say in my example, I'm only going to look at females in my base. What if we change those to your career tech pathways, and you wanted to be able to simply go through and look at the attendance rates for specific pathways? Or if you wanted to filter it by an associate school district. So you could actually set up filters and say, show me a welding pathway for a specific Acme local, and you'd be able to monitor and break down very quickly the attendance there. You could also do this in other ways. I'm showing you attendance right now. We can do similar things for, let's say, course performance. In the example I'm showing you on the screen at this moment, we're simply looking at primarily English language arts, math, science, and social studies. We can add our career tech pathways. We could put CTE courses there. We wanted to monitor what's our failure rate or problems in our CTE courses. Or we could bring them together. And I've put this under what we call TBT chart. In this particular case, we're looking at the number of students that's off track in any one of those three areas. What I want to point out to you, though, is this system is designed to show whatever data that you want. If you can put it into a spreadsheet, you can make a visualization off of it. We can bring multiple data points. So one of the things I've been talking to, for example, Ohio High Point about is we're looking at taking a visualization and taking the state test results. So everybody's getting ready to sit down and take the web exam results and your end of course exams. Let's extract that information into a CSV file and connect it to your attendance rates. What are we seeing as far as students off track, and how they're performing on web exams and how they're performing on end of course exams? So how can we make the visualization to kind of inform you of hotspots for future planning or current interventions for students? Now, if you're interested in learning more about Looker Studio, in our slideshow today, I provided 3 links to you. Now, these links are going to reference an older version of Looker Studio, but the process still works the same. And I'm just going to go through those 3 links with you real quick. The first is a PowerPoint presentation over Data Studio, the previous name to Looker Studio. And I like this presentation. It goes through, it explains the basics of it. It is a good way to get started if you've never played with it. The second one is an example of using Looker Studio with education data. They actually have YouTube videos that talk to you. Now, in this particular case, they're using preschool data, but I like the fact that they're using student information system that I'm not accustomed to. So it makes me think about different ways of using different data sources that are being provided to us by either the Department of Education workforce, whether it be through Ohio State through the web exam portal, maybe data being shared to us by a vendor. If you're using, let's say, UScience, because you can extract UScience information out. So what would happen if we attached UScience to our attendance data and our course performance data? Or the number of students? Anytime we can get that out into a spreadsheet, we can make a visualization off of it. The last one is a series of videos on Data Studio. Again, that's Looker Studio's previous name. These are still available. They're still free, but it's training modules. This will go through the basics, and it's a step-by-step training on how to use all the functions of Looker Studio. And this is free from Google. But those are 3 resources I wanted to leave you with. I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions. You can unmute yourself or put something in the chat box.
Ray, I did have one question going back to something very early you mentioned. You mentioned Neola districts. They may want to look to see if they have a version of 24.13.
Yes.
What was the code for the non-Neola districts again?
IJ, I believe. It's either IJ or JI. Ohio School Board Association uses letters instead of numbers for the policies. But what you'll find is both versions, whether you're Neola or Ohio School Board Association, they all say the same thing. It says that the district shall develop a plan, and then it lists the minimums that are required by the law. So it's the plan that becomes the issue. The plan is actually how are you executing? And this is where this data collection and how you'll communicate it in the visualization comes into play. Every career tech planning district uses a different process on your improvement cycles. How are you improving? What are you focused on? How are you collecting the information? So Looker Studio is an option to bring a lot of different information together in a manner to allow you to drill down to what might be causing some of your root causes. We know attendance is an issue, a large scale issue. So if we took and set attendance to the side, how could we focus on those hot areas about course performance and behavior, and then bring the attendance data back in? Are we having high failure rates possibly in a pathway or program? Is that because of instruction, or could that be because the students aren't attending school to get the instruction? What type of intervention do we've got to provide to overcome the gap caused maybe by the attendance, or maybe I've got a new instructor that's struggling to explicitly provide services to students? This might be one methodology that you can use to improve your instructional practices along with providing the interventions to specific students.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments?
So I just want to ask, like, thinking of a time-wise, the systems don't exactly automatically talk to each other. You would have to enter in the data, but you could download a data report from, say, PowerSchool using those same filter categories and dump that, just a data dump into the looker, correct? So we're talking 10 minutes?
Well, when you first set it up, you've got to make the design part. The design takes longer, but the download, I'm going to go work with the district tomorrow and they're going to download the files. If you've ever used Dazzle, depending on the internet speed, we might take 10-15 minutes to download the Dazzle files and we'll be done. It's setting it up and how you want the visualization to look that takes the longest time. But we're not talking weeks or anything. We're just talking maybe 4 to 5 hours, depending on how technical detailed you want. I am by far no expert. I picked up Looker Studio and was running with it within about 30 minutes. Now, I know there's some other individuals that have professional skills that work on this, and they spend a lot more time on their nice, pretty reports. I was more interested in just the basics of functionality and getting it out there. If I was a participant today, I think one of the things I would be asking myself walking away from today's session, if I had one of my associate school districts that needed access to the attendance, behavior, and course performance information, where would I get it? How would I communicate it to my associate school? Would it be beneficial for us as a career tech planning district to look at this data, say on a quarterly basis or more often, in making decisions about what interventions and services we're providing? And is there a way to simplify the process to communicate it out to our associate districts? Well, Lisa, I don't see anything else, so I'm going to stop my share and transfer it over to you.
All right. Let me share my screen with sound because I do have a video today. Coffee hour. So I just want to thank Ray for sharing his expertise with us and especially giving us all of those links for you. He's already got a lot of stuff set up for you if you like the layout of this. And, you know, I think it's really important that we start talking more about data, having those data discussions and modeling what that data discussion making can look like. Because I have a couple of slides here to share with you. Hanover Research. I think I shared this about a year ago, but when Ray and I were talking about this data issue, it just reminded me, you know, we expect people to use data, right? So 77% is the percentage of teachers who agree their school leaders encourage employees to use data, right? So we're telling people use data, but it's only 57% of that say that teachers who agree their school leaders regularly model the data, right? So we're not modeling for our teaching staff how to look at data, how to make decisions because of what the data is telling us. And then the 17% here is this percentage of teachers, got to get my stuff out of the way, that report they learned how to use data in their education coursework. So if we're not, and especially think of career tech teachers, right? So if we're not modeling and showing them how to use data and they're not getting it in their coursework to become a teacher, then we're going to struggle, right? So it's important, I think, to really start having these data decision makings, because you may think one thing, but then when you actually pull the data, sometimes it illustrates something else you were not aware of. So I really encourage you to start making that more of, you know, when you have your monthly staff meetings or you send out a monthly email blast to your staff of sharing some data, talking about data, and discussing decisions that were made because of that data. We don't want to just admire the data, right? Here's our data. Well, what are we going to do because of this data? I know we used to look back when I was at a career center, we would get incident data at the end of the year, a collection of all of our behavior issues, where we were having suspensions and kids who got caught smoking, all of those things. We would get that data, but we never sat around as an administrative team and talked about what that data meant and what we could do to change that data, right? And I think that that was a missed opportunity on our part, because, you can use that data to help you determine where, like Ray said, where are your hot spots, right? And so, just as a reminder, this also comes from Hanover Research. Using that data literacy, that ability to effectively access, interpret, use, and share data is a critical skill for educators, right? It helps us to recognize and quantify our needs. It helps us to build consensus around solutions. It's transparency, right? It keeps us all in the know. It maximizes effectiveness and can enhance outcomes. This measure changes over time. I really think this one is important. As people are talking about attendance and how a lot of schools are struggling with attendance issues right now, look at that historical data, right? This is where we are this quarter, but not compared to second quarter. What is it? Third quarter of 2023, third quarter of 2022. What has that looked like? Because while our attendance may be better this semester, what did that attendance look like a year ago? What did that attendance look like 2 years ago? So really looking at data historically as well to make decisions. And then to demonstrate results with community members. I really like that idea, as Ray was sharing, of disaggregating your data by your career tech pathway programs, because you can use that for your business advisories. You might be able to use that for marketing material, right? So there's lots of ways that we can start to think about how to use data to share with others, to communicate with others, but also how to use data for that decision making. Oh, just wanted to share those two resources. Again, those are from Hanover Research, and there are links in the slides for you. Before I move on to my share of new resources, I always want to offer up this time. Is there anyone who has questions for the group about anything CTE? Do you have any burning questions from your career center, from your partner schools that you want to ask the group? We've got a nice attendance here today. So if you have a question, this would be a great time to ask.
I think I'm showing my appreciation, but I'm thinking maybe.
All right, well, seeing nothing in chat and not hearing anyone unmute specifically to ask a question, I will continue moving us forward. I do have a couple of new shares for you this time. I tried to keep it small since we always run over on time. The first thing I'm super excited to share with you, Heather McGowan. I just saw this in my Techniques magazine from National ACTE. Heather McGowan is going to be the featured keynote speaker at the conference in December, Vision 2024. That will be in Texas this year. So Heather is the author of a couple of books. These are her two most recent, The Adaptation Advantage and The Empathy Advantage. And I really liked this idea of this adaptation advantage. I'm going to be honest, I have not read it yet, but I have downloaded it. It actually is on my Kindle app on my phone for me to read and then probably purchase. But, she's got this tagline up here, right? Let go, learn fast, and thrive in the future of work. And I could not help but think about where we're at right now in Ohio. Right? We are seeing, I'm going to call it an evolution. I don't really feel like it's a total revolution right now, but career tech is expanding and it's changing in the state of Ohio. And while we used to have, our CTPDs, we're starting to see that kind of trickle out and into our schools, more into our partner schools than before. And there seems to be a little bit of a push to have more career tech programming out there for students, which is a good thing. I know those of us who've been in career tech education for a while, we feel a little bit of anxious about that because we've always been the keepers of the knowledge when it comes to career tech education. But the reality is so many more students should be getting skills training than what we have in the past, right? And so if our doors were big enough that we could take everybody in who needs it, it would be different. But the reality is so many more kids need career tech education that we need to start seeing career tech populate into other places, into our partner schools, into community schools. And Heather McGowan is really good about getting you thinking about getting creative and doing things differently, right? Rethinking business model teams and organization structures to become resilient in a changing market. That's where we are right now. It's a changing landscape when it comes to career tech education. And maybe we need to let go, learn fast, and thrive in the future of what this looks like for career tech education. Because if we're not willing to let go, adapt, the adaptation advantage, we may struggle a little, right? I think we're going to do better if we roll with it and take the lead in it as we change the landscape in career tech education. Heather McGowan, I was introduced to last year through Kevin Fleming. You've heard me talk about Kevin Fleming in the past. He was one of she was one of his keynote speakers. I was blown away. And so when I saw that she was the keynote speaker for Vision, I had to share that with you. So just to give you a little bit of a taste of who Heather McGowan is, I'm going to share just a quick segment of this video with you. I'm actually going to, I have it already set to go. I thought I did. And maybe not. So we will play from here.
Once everything's perfectly organized, I'll start working on my thesis.
Grammarly will ensure you.
Every generation.
So I want to play
Why does this matter at a
this
conference talking about education or talking about work? Because these are going to be your students.
right here, 7:30.
These are going to be your employers. These are going to be employers' children. These have implications for healthcare policy, how you talk about use of pronouns, bathrooms, etc. And it's a really fast change, faster, I think, than the technology changes. And it makes a lot of folks uncomfortable, but it's something we have to work through. Changes in technology. The pandemic accelerated technology in some really interesting ways. So if you look at a few timelines here, the time it takes for us to hand off tasks to technology. The original model was the Frey-Orsborn model that said we'd hand off about 50% of our tasks to technology by 2033. The speed in which we're migrating to the cloud, Accenture said we were about 20% into the cloud prior to the pandemic, with the remaining 80% would take a decade. Digital transformation, we're a little further down the road on that, so we look at 5-year increments. And then vaccine developments, because we just went through a pandemic. Vaccines usually take somewhere between 10 and 15 years. The mumps was 4 years. Polio was 50 years, but 10 to 15 is average. So what's happened? The World Economic Forum says we're handing off things to technology at twice the speed. We may hand off half of our work tasks, those routine tasks that we talked about, to technology by 2025. I find the World Economic Forum a little hyperbolic. I find them a little ahead of things, but we are handing things off to technology more quickly. Accenture said we're migrating to the cloud now at twice the speed. And McKinsey said that we leapt forward 5 years in our digital transformation the first 60 days we went into lockdown. Why was that? Because Zoom had been around for a decade and we all finally started using it. Digital transformation is really human transformation. It's humans using tools that have been around us. Vaccine development, we developed a vaccine in 10 months. How did we do that? We had the genomic sequence for the first time, we had computational immunology, and then we had a global arms race to find a solution. This is a sign of what we're capable of. This is a really good sign.
So I want you to think about that before I play a little bit more here. Where we were expected, how long things would take, and how that has drastically changed, right? We are accelerating the rate of that we are adopting and adapting and changing much, much faster than originally anticipated, in part because of the pandemic. But that pandemic is having lasting impacts on the way we do business, right? And so to think about, as we're looking at career tech, and even just our traditional classroom structure. Guys, if your schools look the same, whether you're a career tech or a comprehensive or a compact, if your model looks the same as it did 10 years ago, you're not paying attention to what's going on. Our schools should not look the same as they did 10 years ago. Now is the time, right, to let go and adapt, right? To make those changes, to revolutionize what that educational setting looks like for your students and for your teachers.
And then since then, Chat GDP and generative AI is the first example of generative AI that people have seen. And the impact of it over the next 10 years, they think will reach at least more than half of jobs, about 63%, and have a 7% increase on GDP, 10x if we realize our potential as Jared presented. Now, what does this mean? This really means an unprecedented pressure on people to learn and adapt. And we have to acknowledge that pressure is going to be a challenge for folks. We already are feeling some of that change fatigue, and part of our job in learning and work is to help people navigate through that change fatigue.
So I just wanted to share that with you because I think, you know, the things that she talked about there, the pressure to learn and adapt, we are feeling that. You may be feeling, your teachers may be feeling a little bit of change fatigue, but change happens, right? Change is really the only constant, and it's to help our people to go with that change, to lead that change so that they can determine what that change should look like that is best for your district. So again, Heather McGowan, she will be the keynote speaker at the National ACTE Conference in December. That is in Texas this year, typically in Las Vegas, but this year it is moving to Texas. Another thing I came across recently, this is from the Fordham Institute. So I wanted to point out a couple of things here. Ohio has a vibrant and established CTE sector. Every high school student has access to CTE courses and programs, whether through their assigned CTPD or through College Credit Plus. But there is still much work to be done to ensure Ohio's CTE sector is living up to its full potential. It's kind of like I said earlier, we have so many more kiddos out there who should be getting some skills from career tech education. And that's why you see this push to expand our career tech programming. Far too many students and families are unaware of the plethora of opportunities that exist along with their short and long-term benefits, right? We must do more to clearly and concisely track data, going back to that data, on access and outcomes, and to ensure that courses, programs, credentials, and work-based learning opportunities are rigorous and meaningful. Right, so this just came out in February of 2024. There's a link to it. It is a lengthy document, but I wanted to just kind of highlight those things for you to see that career tech is alive and well in Ohio, but it's blooming, right? We want to see more of that happen and more kids having access to career tech education. And in doing so, I know you've seen the equipment grant was awarded earlier this year, and they have offered that out again. But additionally, along with the career tech equipment grant, the department is also offering an equity for each grant. I think this is a really good opportunity for our schools to look at adding some things that can help students either in career tech pathways or earning industry recognized credentials or supporting our special populations to be more successful. So when Ray was sharing that the data looker that he had, looking at data like that might help you to think about where are there pockets in your school that could use additional support and what kind of support could that be? And then using this grant to help you the cost for that. So wanted to let you know this grant is available. There is a link here to the grant. And also I wanted to share with you some ways that this grant has been used in the past, right? So we've got to establish support positions for transition economically disadvantaged pathway students from secondary to post-secondary. So helping kids make that gap to college, preparing them for that. Adding aid positions to support students with disabilities in career tech education. New support staff and equipment for increasing enrollment for students with disabilities in workforce development pathways. Development of new supports and resources as a bridge to post-secondary education, especially for English language learners. I know I'm working with a school right now that has had an influx of like some refugee situations. They're coming in as 11th graders and they've not been in school. Maybe they had a 5-year gap in school and they can't speak or read English yet. That's a struggle. So this may be an opportunity to use this equipment, or I'm sorry, the equity for each grant to find ways to support those students and to get them prepared for the world of work. Establishing recruitment and enrollment supports to increase enrollment and participation from non-traditional students into the engineering pathway. And the expansion of lab capacity and providing additional supports to increase enrollment of economically disadvantaged students into healthcare pathways, right? So lots of opportunity here. These are ways it has been awarded in the past. One that is not here, but we have had on a coffee hour in the past. If you were with me last year, like last school year, Josh Young from Pickaway Ross. Josh shared with us how he was using the Lean Six Sigma, and he used an equity for each grant to pay for that initial Lean Six Sigma to get his teachers trained and get that program started. So this is out there. The deadlines are coming up soon. I think maybe May. So it's open now until I think May 15th. Don't quote me on that. It is actually in the link here for the grant paperwork. So it's a good time for you to start thinking about, do you have certain special populations, whether it is your English language learners, your students with disabilities, your economically disadvantaged? Do you have students who are struggling? And what is something that would help them to be more successful, to gain that to their next step, right? To actually get to their E and be successful and enrolled, enlisted, or employed, right? It's not just getting them to graduation, it's getting them through graduation. And thinking of getting them through graduation, right? Getting them to their next steps. I came across this resource. This one specifically was to think about before you're applying for a job, right? So it's, have you emailed, right? Have an email address that includes your name. So not your school email. Does your student have their own email that once they leave you, they're going to have access to? Do they know how to check it every day, right? Do they know that they should be checking it every day when they are searching for a job? Just some good tips here. Having that LinkedIn profile. I really like this. Look into getting skill endorsements for your connections. So those skill endorsements, right? In career tech, our kids have skills, right? When they are doing their web exams, we've got those student outcomes. You can, the ones that they have been top notch on, we can pull those in, give a handout for the kids so that they know, hey, these are the things you're really good at. Be sure that you spotlight that on a resume, on a cover letter, on an application. You know, practice that so that they know as they're going to talk to a potential employer to showcase what it is that they're good at. So I thought this was a really neat tip sheet. But I also liked, and these resources, these are from the Transition to Adulthood Center for Research. There was this resource that they have. I'm going to take you to this. Maybe I'm going to take you to this. Close out of a few things, see if that helps us. All right, so if we scan down, there's the one for applying for a job that I showed with you. I really liked this, other ways to find jobs, right? So because sometimes once our kids leave us, they don't know what to do. They don't have you to talk to every day. They don't have you encouraging them, right? So how could you put together, oh, I'm turning purple. on my screen. Hold on a minute. I need to make Aaron a co-host because when I turn purple up in that box, it boots me off.
I am here, so
So I'm gonna
That's
make
why I had to turn
Aaron
off my
also
camera.
a co-host in case I get booted off, that this can continue. Sorry about that, folks. I
you
don't
may
know
wanna
why
try
this
to-
happens to me, but
you-
occasionally I turn purple.
you may want to try to turn off your camera, turn it back on real quick. It may work too.
Yeah, let's shut my camera off too.
Then turn it back on.
So we'll just go without me on the screen. That's okay. Right. So what I thought about this other ways to find jobs, like what if you created something like this as a resource? Like what are your staffing agencies in your region? What are job fairs that typically happen throughout your region? Contact Ohio Means Jobs. Contact your community colleges. Reach out to Northwest State, Owens, Rhodes. Are they having job fairs? When do they typically have job fairs? Create a resource document like this for your kiddos to take with them that they can refer back to when they are no longer your kiddos, right? I really like this idea of providing a resource. So this is a general resource, but if you made it specific to your area, to your region, how beneficial that could be for students as they leave you and to find their E. You know, so just some nice resources here. But when I saw this one specifically, it just made me thinking how fantastic that would be for students to have one created specifically for their region. So they knew what was out there when they are no longer with you. Moving on, as we finished out here, 7 minutes left to the upcoming training and PD that we do have happening. First, want to spotlight the Success Bound conference that Tech Prep is putting on. This is really, really a great conference to go to. And this lineup here, I'm super excited about. I have seen several of these people speak before. Dan, I think, has been there in the past as a representative. Really good information. TJ Houston, oh my goodness. I saw him earlier this school year as he presented to the new career tech teacher group, and he does a phenomenal job with AI. So he is a current instructor at Ashland County West Holmes Career Center, but he knows his stuff, and he's a great resource. You'll learn a lot from TJ. I promise you, if you think Ray Blevins blew you out of the water with his AI presentation, wait till you see TJ, because it's just mind-blowing, everything. And if I remember correctly, TJ's wife is a physician, and he shared that even the physicians in her office are being encouraged to use AI as part of their processes, right? So if they have a person come in and they think about the different things that could be what could be impacting this person's health, to also consult with AI as well. That may become, he's saying, a common practice as we move forward in the future. So that this conference in itself, I think, is a do not miss. If you can possibly attend, highly encourage you to do so. Kathy is on. Kathy, if you want to add any additional comments about Success Bound?
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate that. The even more exciting news to add to this is, you're right, we have an extremely exciting line of presenters, and we just put out a reminder for the conference, and we have a string this long of additional presenters too that are going to be doing some breakouts and things. So we're just really excited that we can bring this much information to Northwest Ohio, and we really hope that you will register soon. That way we know for sure we have the right amount of seating and everything. Lisa's been instrumental also in help us bringing the presentation for EI, right? AI. So Lisa, thanks, shout out to you for helping. So hope all of you will be looking for that registration. If you can't get it quite from this QR or something like that, just email me or email Lisa, and I know she'll get it to us or get it right out to you. So thanks a lot. Okay, a couple of my coordinators are on too. I know, I believe I saw Rhonda Hilgrave and Deborah Rivers and maybe Judy Ennis. So it's good to see you all.
All right, thank you. So that is at Terra State this year. So Terra State on April 26th.
Thank you.
Also, I think it's important for you to share with those in your building that we do have the web exam annual update. So this will be a Zoom. You know, our last coffee hour, we brought in Brenna Bartlett from the Department of Education and Workforce, and she talked about all the different modifications and accommodations that are available on web exam testing. And I know it was new knowledge for some of you to learn that even if it's not in the drop-down box, that if it's something that is on the IEP, it typically can still be honored as long as you reach out to SEAT. So I encourage you to have someone from your school participating and attending the annual web exam update Zoom, and then sharing that information out. You know, make sure they're not the keeper of the secrets, that they share what it is that they learned from that annual update. That is April 10th, so that is coming up soon. There is, as put in chat by Ray, thank you, the link to that to get registered for that. So please consider having someone attend from your CTPD, and then that someone shares the information with everyone else. As I talked about, Heather McGowan, so ACTE's Career Tech Vision, you can register now for this conference, Vision 2024 in San Antonio, Texas, December 4th and 7th. I am really hoping that I get to attend this one because I am very anxious to see Heather McGowan speak in person. So if you are able to, there is the information for that. I know some people, High Schools at Work, had been a very big conference that they went to. Since unfortunately we no longer are participating with High Schools at Work as a state level, I hope that maybe some of you who previously had gone to that conference will be able to go to the National ACTE Conference. And just want to remind you that we do have one more coffee hour scheduled for this school year. It will be June 14th. That is a date change. Originally it was June 6th. We have rescheduled that to June 14th. I believe that is a Friday. Becky Bin from Oregon Clay, she is going to be hosting us. It is an in-person extended coffee hour from 9 to noon. She's going to talk specifically about what she and Valley have done with There's a Hat for That. So that's one of the books by Kevin Fleming. It is a children's book, and how they've utilized that as part of the programming that they offer, kind of a recruitment and awareness of career tech education for their students at the lower grade levels to learn about careers and to connect that to what's offered through their CTPD. She's also done a really good job of switching over many of their electives to become career tech connected electives, right? So things in the past that might have been just a traditional elective, she is now moving as many of those as she could to become career tech electives. She also has a new program we're going to look at, and then a really cool thing that she does with the food truck competition. So we'll be seeing those. We'll get a tour of her career tech labs. That is an in-person, June 14th, 9 to noon. If you have registered before for the June conference, since we have changed the date, I'm asking that you register again. So that we know that you know it is the 9 to noon, that it is in person, and we will see you there at Oregon High School on June 14th. Looking forward to it. Becky and Valley, they're like a dynamic duo, so I cannot wait to have them talk to you guys and showcase some of these really cool things that they have going on at their career tech. And then also, please take the time before you head out to complete our evaluation link. That should be for today, not for June 14th. So go ahead and use this link. I apologize for that, but that is for today. That's one I did not catch. Sorry for that error. Please use this feedback form to give us a little bit of feedback on today's session. You know, we do use this data to help us to determine what kind of things we need to provide for you. We appreciate your feedback. We do use that data to help us make decisions. So with that, I am wishing you a fabulous day. Definitely a safe and healthy evening. I'm a little concerned about the weather, so I hope that everyone stays safe and have a great school year.
Lisa, the evaluation link, can you post that one more time?
Sure.
I think. Yeah, it says for June 14th on the top of that too, but you want us to use that one?
Yeah, so we'll just
Okay.
use that one and I'll have them switch it. I don't know what happened there.
A lot going on. That's all right, my friend. A lot going on.
Hey, Frank, I don't know if you're still on, but good to see you here. I hope you're doing well.
Do we stop the recording?
I was just looking for that.